Welcome to Kailash. I'm Vishnu here from Kerala. I hope you're all doing fine. I hope you're all doing fine. And I wish happy Onam to all Malayalis all over the world. And let's get straight away to the topic. So in this video, I'm planning to cover. In this video, I'm going to cover the concept of a basic planning in chess. How do you plan in chess, and what is planning in chess? So to put it in a layman's terms, why do you need a plan in the first place? Let me tell you that. Why do you need a plan? So you need a plan because you're not like you're not simply driving without knowing the destination, right? You want to know where your destination. So you want to set an objective, a goal in your mind in order to achieve it. So first of all, in order to achieve that goal, you need a plan also. So here, what is your goal? It is to win the game. So in order to win the game, you need to have a plan. That's a most simplest thing There is a very simplest thing to say. So how do you make a plan? So that's uh, comes to your mind. So while making a plan, you need to consider two factors. That is, one is strategy and another is tactics. So to say a little bit more into what is a plan is like a blueprint of an idea that you would like to perform and win the game. And so strategy, what is strategy? Strategy is a task. It could be, if you go by its Oxford Dictionary meaning, it says it is a long-term goal and it's a tedious plan with lots of tasks and such is called as a strategy. So here it's more or less the same in chess too. Uh, Strategy involves the idea that you would like to perform. For example, I can explain you what is strategy and tactics with an example like this position on the board. So before I get to this position on the board, let me put it in some general terms. Let me put it theoretically to you. So strategy is nothing but a step. It's like clarifies what we need to do, what problems have to be solved to attain the goal. And tactics is a means of implementing this strategy. So let me quickly get to this example. As you can see already here, white is a rook for a bishop. It's going, that's strange. Okay, white has a rook for a bishop and for a pawn and a bishop. Now, what should be your strategy in your mind? You need to win this game, right? How do you proceed your game from here? You have two pawns, and black has got three pawns and a bishop, and you also have a rook. Okay, so I was saying that the rook on h6 is um, is what white has got against a pawn, which is extra, and against a bishop. That means white has got a rook for a pawn and a bishop. So materially, that is nearly equal. But is the position equal? Can white win this position, or it is going to be a draw? Is a question. So, as per my understanding, this position is clearly winning for white. Why is it winning for white? Because now the main strategy that white is going to implement is to move away this king away from the d6 square. So why do you want to do that? Because these are the two defenders that is supporting the d6 pawn. One is a bishop, other is a king. So we have got two attackers. One is a king, other is a rook. So you have to move away, push away the king from the seventh rank so that you can take this pawn, capture this pawn. So how will you do it? You will achieve it by playing rook to h7 check. Now, no matter what black plays, whether he goes to C8 or D8 or E8, it doesn't matter because white will come to E6 once that happens. Then move his rook to D7 and then capture this pawn. So you might be wondering, isn't a pawn much more valuable than a rook? I mean, sorry, is it a rook which is much more valuable than a pawn? And why do you want to give away the rook just for a pawn and a bishop? Because after a rook captures on D6, the bishop on C5 will recapture it, and the king has to recapture it as well, the white king. So let me explain it to you once again. After rook h7 check, king will move to any one of these squares. So let's say he goes to d8, king moves to e6, and he plays any random move like king e8, rook goes to d7, he goes to f8, rook takes d6, bishop d6, king takes d6. Now it is very clear for you, I believe, why did we sacrifice that rook for that pawn and the bishop? Simply because we could capture all the pawns of black and win the game. The rest pawns are e5 and f4, and this white king can easily capture both these pawns. There is no way that this black king on f8 can defend these two pawns. And with our two extra pawns, we can easily convert it to a win by pawn promotion. By simply pushing these pawns forward and promote it to a queen. So that was the main strategy. The main strategy here was to move away the king away from defending the d6 pawn. And what is the tactics that we used to implement it? Uh, you can simply call it a deflection tactic or something like that if you want to put a name to it. But actually, it is doesn't. I mean, I wouldn't say it is a deflection tactic exactly because you achieved it in a quite a number of moves. So it was you achieved it in a series of moves altogether. So deflection was just one of the point. The strategy was to move it away from the king so that you can capture the d6 pawn. Of course, you can call it deflection also, but it's anyway. Well, that's one more. That's more important than that is how you perform this tactic. So here, the idea was to move the king to e6, put the rook on d7 so that you can capture the d6 pawn. Then after bishop recaptures, you have recaptured with your king and then take away the rest of the pawns. So I hope you understood this example. So a bishop and a pawn is less valuable than a rook. Yeah, that is true. So in very, very general terms, for absolute beginners, they might be little afraid to give away a more valuable piece to a lesser valuable piece because they are just absolute beginners and they don't know the ulterior motive behind that move of sacrificing the rook. So, so that's why I needed to explain this in detail through this simple example as to why you can sacrifice. Sacrifice is also another tactic. You can also call this a sacrifice. So I'll be talking more about various kind of tactics in the upcoming videos. Sacrifices like pin, four, discovered attack, discovered check, zigzag, sacrifice, and all that. So here, I don't want to get into the details and confuse you people with too much information. So I hope you understood this example. Let's go to another example. Pardon me for the errors. You know, I'm just a new YouTuber and I'm kind of nervous too. So pardon me for the errors that I'm making, but I'll keep it as good as possible to the best of my abilities. Thank you. Let's move forward. 1 second. Okay. Now, this is the second example. Now, take a look at this position. Uh, take 15 seconds of time. So, whenever you look at a position, you need to first assess the position. and then analyze the position. So what's the difference between assessing and analyzing? Aren't they the same or is it different? You might get this question in your mind. Definitely they're different because analyzing is nothing but going into depth and analyzing various combinations. It may not be in depth, of course, even if it is 3 to 4 in depth, it's still called as a combination, but usually in depth. So analyzing means you go in depth and you create a tree of variations of space because if you chess is it's a very tough game because there are a lot many variations to analyze when you get into complicated positions. In Javelin, there is a book by a grandmaster called Alexander Koto. It's called as Think Like a Grandmaster. And he says, it talks about tree of analysis in that book, which means from one branch of analysis, many other branches and sub variations arise because there are so many possibilities after you make one move. And it is very difficult to perform all those analysis. So it creates a tree of analysis. So that's what happens is the variations, as the piece, if the especially when there are lots of pieces on the board, the variations increase exponentially. So it is very difficult to calculate all this with clarity in your mind. So it's difficult. But here we look at an endgame puzzle, and that's the reason I chose an endgame puzzle because there are less number of pieces. Less number of pieces means lesser variations to analyze. So that is about analysis. Now, what is assessment? Assessment is done based on the placement of your pieces and many other factors. For example, king safety, pawn structure, and whether you have good control over the center, and so on. The relative strengths of pieces. Do you have any material advantage? Are you ahead in material? Are you up in material when compared to your opponent? There are so many factors like this. And how do you finally decide who is better? So first you take down all these factors and you go one by one and you check whether you have this factor in favor of you or in favor of your opponent. Finally, you narrow it down to say like out of this say that out of these 5 factors, you say like you have got 3 factors in favor of you, and there are 2 factors in favor of your opponent. Depending on the position and depending on the factors you've taken into consideration, you come to a conclusion that white is better or black is better. So that is what is called as assessment. Assessment need not necessarily involve analysis because it is based on placement of the pieces. That is the contextual situation on the board. That is the current situation on the board. So you don't necessarily analyze while assessing. You just take the factors into account. For example, here I can see certain weaknesses. Both you can see materially both are equal, but is the position equal? Materially they are equal. Both have got 2 bishops, pawn each, 2 kings each. But is this position actually in favor of white, or is it an equal position, or is it in favor of black? So how do you decide who's actually better here? First you need to identify the weaknesses in your opponent's camp, not just the weaknesses in your opponent's camp, both the strengths and weaknesses in the opponent's camp, and your own strengths and weaknesses. But the imminent threat that white is facing is bishop h7 check, because after bishop h7 check, king moves to f6, bishop to g6, then king h5 and king h6, king h7, and then black is completely safe. So you are allowing a piece to develop by playing bishop to h7 check, and then king f6, bishop g6, and this bishop has got control of the b1 h7 diagonal. And so it has come out of its disability. Its main disability here is that it's f7 pawn, and the only escapes for it has got is h7. f7 is completely blocking its diagonal, whereas that's not the case with white's bishop. It's completely open. There are no pawns or pieces blocking it. And even this pawn can be moved forward with the support of a king, whereas this pawn cannot be moved forward, the f7 pawn. It's because there is no pawn, there is no piece or pawn to support. So how do you take advantage of this weakness? How do we take advantage of this weakness? And also the king is a bit more advanced. the black king on is on h4. It has come into the white's territory. So how do you push this back? So the idea is, now imagine, you should also have some imagination. It's very important. You have to develop all these abilities. It's very difficult. You need to practice every day with various techniques, tools, softwares in order to become a better chess player. So you just try imagining this king on h8, and how can you checkmate the black king? If it is possible, if your white king is on g6, and then you deliver a check on d4 on h8, on, when the king is on h8, because black's king is on h8, your king is on g6, white's bishop is on d4, black's bishop is on g8. So there is nowhere this black king can move. The g8 square is covered by the bishop. I mean, it's where the bishop has been placed. h7 and g7 are covered by the king and the bishop, and there is a check from d4, so it's clearly a mate. So just be careful. So this is one thing which I would like to tell you, that in order to create a strategy, first you need to spot or identify the weaknesses in the opponent's territory. That is, you also need to know your shortcomings too, because you don't want to just go on with your own plan. But most people do it, especially in shorter time controls, because there is less time to think. So you just get an idea and you try to execute it immediately. Sometimes it so happens that one who started out the attack wins the game in the game of chess, especially in blitz and bullet chess, because you don't have much time to think. It is easier to attack than to defend. Defending requires more time to think. So that's why attacking players win in the shorter time controls more easily and more fastly than less people who are less mu- people who are less used to shorter time controls. There are many good rapid players and blitz players who are not actually good classical players, but they are good rapid and blitz players. So that's one thing which I wanted to share. So here, how do you now execute this idea, Mr. Bishop? So you execute this idea. One other threat, that the imminent threat that white is facing is bishop at 7-6. So white should not give any room or space for black to breathe. That is, he immediately needs to do something so that he can prevent that from happening. The bishop h7 move. So he achieves this objective by performing a series of moves. Bishop f2 check, king h5, g4 check, king h6. So why did you play g4 check? Again, forcing the king to move backwards. You cannot move to black king cannot move to g5, g6, or h4 once you play g4. So these three squares are controlled by white. Okay. So he plays g4. King moves to h6. Now king f6. Why not bishop d2? Sorry, bishop e3. Why not bishop e3? Because that is not a good move. Because you are throwing away your advantage. You would like to push the king backwards and giving less room to breathe, because you want to trap this black king in his corner, because that is possible right now. If you perform bishop e3, you can immediately escape to king to g7 and escape. So you don't want that to happen. So immediately you want to play king to f6. So after king h6 is played, you play king f6, king h7. Now, once again, you want to control the h6 square, the h6 square. So that's why g5 was played. King to h8. As you can see from the mode, none of these two pieces can move. The pawn cannot move forward. The bishop is already stuck here. The bishop is as good as dead. It doesn't have anything to do. So king h8, bishop to d4. Once again, king king to h7. Or you might be wondering what happens with bishop to h7. If you play bishop to h7, I'll give you 5 seconds to think. What should white play? Because it's mate in one, guys. It's mate in one. You play bishop h7, you can simply play king to f7. King takes f7. King captures on f7, and it's a checkmate because you are giving out a discovered check. And this is also a tactic called discovered check. What do you mean by discovered check? Like what you saw just now. You're opening up the way for another piece, and that piece whose way you opened is delivering a check to your opponent's king. It's called a discovered check. In this case, it is a discovered check and it is also checkmate because there is nowhere the white blacks will. There is nowhere the black king can go. Now, after bishop, so that's what happens if you play bishop h7. So after bishop b4, black played king h7, and now you have to make some move uh, to push the king back to h8. What will you play now? Of course, you don't want to play g6 because it's a stupid move. Why is it stupid? Because it doesn't achieve it. You're simply giving up a pawn for nothing. You want to keep this pawn here because it's controlling the h6 square. And what should you play? So you want the king because you can't give a check right now. You can't move the king from anywhere here. If you move the so what should you actually play here? The correct move is to play bishop a1. You can also move on bishop to b2 or c3 or to e5 also. Doesn't matter. You're just playing a waiting move here. Waiting move in the sense you're just waiting for playing. You're just playing some harmless moves in order to achieve your objective. That is, you want to make its black's turn here, and so that you can push the pawn to g6 and win the game. So here, after bishop a1, the only move black has got is to play king h8. And now you play g6. If you take on g6, I take on g6, and it's checkmate. In case you don't want to take on g6, you play something like bishop to h7. If I take on g h7, what would happen, guys? That would recapture, and king takes it. What happens is, can I win with one extra piece? Can anybody tell me? I don't think you can win with just one single bishop and no pawns and support from other pieces. Similarly, king with a bishop alone, be it a y squared bishop or a be it a dark squared bishop, you can't win this game. It will be declared as a draw because sorry, because this material is insufficient for you to win the game. It will not help you to win the game because it is not capable of doing so. So it will be declared as a draw. Be it in the place of bishop, even if you have a knight, even if you have two knights and no bishop. Just imagine that you have a king, two kings each, and you have white has got two knights, but still he won't be able to win because the two knights is insufficient material to deliver a checkmate. So that's why normally in the end game we promote it to more powerful pieces, especially the most powerful piece like the queen, and then followed by the rook, because they are capable of controlling more squares and delivering a checkmate. They're capable of doing it themselves and with support from the king. So that's what one thing I want to share. So I'll go to one other position where you might have a doubt. Let me just check. Yeah. And in this position, you might be wondering after king f6, you could have played bishop to h7. But what would happen if you play bishop h7 in this position? You can simply play bishop e3 check and it's check. All the squares are under the control. h5 is controlled by the uh, h5 is controlled by the g4 pawn. g5 is controlled both by the king and the bishop. g6 and g7 is controlled by the king. So this king is checkmate. So that's why you don't play bishop to h7. Of course, you can only delay the mate in this case. But anyway, yeah, that's you can only delay the mate. But the best defense here is to play king to h7 and not bishop to h7. So here the plan, the strategy was to, so finally, to conclude, so in this position which we got, here the plan was to push the king as much as possible towards the corner. Idea, why do you want to push it to this corner on h8? Why not the a8 corner? A8 corner is because you have a dark square bishop and a8 is a light squared square, and you wouldn't want that to happen moving away. And if you let go of the king from to go to the a square, it's very, very, very difficult for you to bring it back to h8 because the king will find ways to escape to the center, and he will you will not be able to push the king to the corner again. So you would like to push it immediately right now because you have the resources to do so and you can achieve it. The bishop to check king h5, g4 check king h6, bishop king f6, king f6, bishop king h7, and so on, and finally white pawn. So the tactic here is the series of checks that you gave with your pieces. There's no name for this particular tactic. It is just tactics in theory. In theoretical definition of a tactics mean a forced sequence of moves that gives an advantage to the player performing the tactic by means of a sacrifice of any one of the pieces or material or through captures and exchanges, resulting in a favorable position for the player who performs the tactic. That is what the theoretical definition of tactic states. Let's look at one more example. This is a little bit lengthy example. It'll take more time. So this game was played in 1894, guys, between a famous player called Tarash and another player called Skeev. And White won this game. So you can see that Black has castled safely, and White is still yet to castle. Um, so 11 moves have been played already, and this is the 12th move, which needs to be played on the board. After 11 moves, in 11 moves in the opening, two pieces have already been exchanged. So in 11 moves, exchanging two pieces is not common. Mm. So here, in this case, in this game, that has happened. So let's see. Let's see how to win this game. So, like I said, you need to create a strategy. So, how do you create a strategy? You need to identify and spot weaknesses in your opponent's territory. Here, one weakness is that Black has got is it's White's turn to play. Is the e4 pawn. Why is it a weakness? Can anybody tell me? It's a weakness because it is too advanced. It has come into the White's territory. So, whenever you push a piece or a pawn, when it comes to the opponent's territory so far, it is going to be difficult to defend it and move it backwards. And that is to bring it back to your territory because so many pieces are there and your opponent's territory controlling many squares. So it will be difficult for you to come back. So here, this e4 pawn is an isolated pawn, which means it is alone. And right now, it is alone. You can play f5 and support it, but right now it is isolated. So that is the weakness. And another thing is that there are no defenders around Black's king except for the rook and this knight, which is not currently a defender. It has to come to f6. But if you come to f6, there are other ways to kick the knight away from that f6 by playing g4, by playing g4, g5, and then you can attack this knight, and then kick away from that. Also, this knight will try to come to f6 to defend this e4 pawn. Once you play a move like queen to c2, and that's what happened in the game actually. You play knight f6, what's going to happen? Why not knight f6? Why should you play f5? Like I said, if you play knight f6, the next move is going to be immediately g4. Idea is simply to play g5, simply to play g5 and attack this, kick away the knight from defending this pawn. Once the knight moves away, you can capture this pawn. So g5 is confirmed. So that's the reason black played f5 instead. Now you cannot immediately achieve your objective, so you have to be quite patient. It takes a lot of time. It takes a series of moves in order to achieve this objective. You have to slowly exploit the weakness and win the game. So this happens only in a classical game. So it is not possible for you to think so hard in shorter time controls. Uh, here is the classical game time control. So you get you know uh, enough time to think and exploit the weaknesses of your opponents. So after f5, white played bishop to d6, attacking the rook. Also, then white can play c5 and stabilize the bishop there. And one other problem that black has got is all his dark squares are weak because there is no black bishop, only this queen on the dark square defending it. But you can see his placement of pawns e6, f5, e4, c6, b7, and h7, which means all these pawns are on light colored squares. Whenever you move a pawn like this from c7 to c6, you can immediately understand that, you can immediately visible that the opposite colored squares would become weak. And since white has got a bishop and also a queen, especially a dark square bishop, which he doesn't want to exchange with this knight because this knight is far badly placed than this good bishop. So you call this a good bishop. There is something called as a good bishop versus a bad bishop or a bad knight, which means you can say this c8 bishop is actually a bad bishop. Why is it a bad bishop? Because it doesn't have anywhere to go. It is blocked by its own pawns and pieces. The e6 pawn, the d7 knight, the b7 pawn, c6 pawn. Even if it moves to d7, it is blocked by these two pawns. So that is one difficulty that really troubles black. So after bishop d6 has been played, black moved his rook to e8. Why did he move to e8? Why not rook to f7? In the game, he played rook e8 because he wanted to free up the position. Because here, the next plan that black has got is he wants to free his bishop on c8 by playing e5. So he will get open this diagonal. So the knight is controlling the e5 square, the rook is controlling the e5 square. So the e5, knight e5, and it's kind of safe. There's nothing problem. There is no problem that black is facing. Also, his bishop can come to e6, f7 can also be a defender in the king side, and also take the control of this diagonal, a2 to g8 diagonal. So he wants to free up the pieces, and it's cramped position, and it's a closed position that black has got. So he wants to open up the position, and so that's why he played his rook to e8. White immediately castles, long castles. So I have told you before that long castling on the castling queen side, it is also called as triple O, or sometimes it's called as triple zero also. And it is also called as long castling on the queen side, castling the queen side. So the idea behind castling the queen side is to attack black on the king side. Why can't you do the same thing by you yourself castling on the king side? Why should you castle on the opposite side and not on the same side? Because if you castle on the king side, and then if you try to attack, it makes no sense. It is a blunder, in fact, because you are also opening up your position by pushing the pawns forward once you have castled to the king side, which would also make your own king vulnerable. These pawns here on e3, f2, these pawns here on h3, g2, and f2 provides a good shelter for the king when castled on the king side. So you wouldn't want to move this forward unless really, really the position demands it. Normally, in 90% of the cases, uh, you usually place it here. You don't move these pawns forward because it would open up your own king and put yourself in a danger because you're exposing your own king by moving the pawns forward. So that is, it's not common sense to play like that is stupidity. So you don't do that mistake. But that's why you castle on the opposite side And now you can perform the pawn storm. It's called a pawn storm. What do you mean by pawn storm? You can play g4, h4, push the pawns forward, exchange it, open the lines for the rooks to attack the enemy king. So that's how you try to win this position. So after triple O, black played knight f6. Now the bishop is under attack by the queen. This bishop on d6 is under attack by the queen, so you simply play bishop to e5. Now black finally develops his bishop to d7. Perhaps his idea is to play c5, then bishop to c6, because then he would get some space to breathe. Now white plays the critical move, f3. Why did he want to play f3? Finally, now here, this is the right moment to play f3. Now you have castled your king to safety and you performed f3. In the earlier position, why didn't you play f3 immediately then? Because your king was still stuck in the center and you have not castled. Castling is always done to put your king in safety, to move your king to safety. You wouldn't want to open the position in the center once again by simply playing f3 even before castling. That is a premature way of attacking your opponent. That's too early to attack your opponent because you yourself have not castled. The opening is not complete, and so it is not the recommended way to do attack the opponent king by doing so. So you play f3, and now critical moment, and black accepts the capture by playing ef3. You recapture it with gf3. It's good for this position is clearly good for white because he has got good control over the center. What do you mean by control over the center? Means he has got control of the central squares. E4, F4, E5, C5, D5, D6. C4 and D4 are already white pieces, so all these things, most of the central squares are controlled by. This is called the center. E5 is E4, D4, D5. And F5 is the only pawn which is controlling the E4 square. Whereas other three squares are clearly in favor of white. White has no other piece in the center. He has not got any central pawn also. Whereas we have one central pawn and another pawn in the extended center and a bishop in the center. So why central control is important? Because it gives you more control over the board. Because a piece performs much more powerfully in the center than on the ends or on the corners of the board, especially a knight. A knight when it's put up in the center, it controls 8 squares. Whereas when it is on the corner, say imagine the knight was on h1, can only go to g3 and f2. It controls only 2 squares. So if you place it in the center, you can go to d7, you can go to f7, g6, g4, f3, d3, c4, c6. So 8 squares. So that's the reason you always say place have good control of the center and put pieces in the center. So that is one thing that beginners should make note of because it's really important. There is something else too, especially in the opening stage. You always say you should play openings with good control in the center, especially for beginners. There are openings like King's Indian and everything where you give away the center to your opponent, and then try to break the center in the subsequent moves and play the position like that. But it's not recommended for beginners to do that. It's always recommended that you play openings which gives you good control of the center. You know, So this is one thing which I wanted to share. So let's go ahead and proceed with the game. After gf3, black played b5. So what is the idea of b5? You might be wondering. Simply to open up the position on the queen side. So it is understood by black that white is trying to attack the king side. That is, black's king is in right. So black is creating counter attack. He's counter attacking the opponent. He's counterattacking the opponent by playing b5. Oh, if you take cb5, it would be a mistake because why is it a mistake? It is a mistake because you're opening up the c5. The rook can come here, it can pin the queen to the king. So there are no problems like that. So you wouldn't want to, open up the position now. You want to keep it closed as possible because then your king would be safe. After b5, so white didn't capture on b5. He simply moved his rook to g1. And he is getting a semi-open file on g5. Now he can attack the black king. He's got control of the g5. The rook to f8. So there are threats coming up. So black has realized that he cannot push his pawn to e5 anymore because the bishop is on e5. And he wants to put his rook on f7, protecting the g7 pawn. So he knows that at some point white will double his rooks on the g file and attack the g7 pawn. So rook to d2, like I said, is coming to g2 square, rook d to g2. Rook f7 has been played, rook d g2, a5. So black is continuing to counterattack by playing a5. Idea is to play a4, then b4, expose white's king too. Currently, white's king is not exposed. It is safe on c1. Even it appears apparently black's king also looks safe because it is not exposed. But you can see the amount of pieces gathered in the king side and the intensity of attack is slowly increasing. And black is about to break queen f2, knight to e8, rook to g5. So the idea of knight to e8 was to prevent the queen from reaching the h4 square because that is controlled by this queen. So this is another thing that to be noted. I would like to share with all of you one other tip that I got from a grandmaster class. Once I got a chance to enter a free grandmaster's class online, and he was talking about the concentration of pieces and on the two different halves of the board. How do you identify that whether it is going to be a king side attack or a queen side attack that your opponent is going to create? So here you can see that how do you identify this? You identify this by looking at the position, that is, by the placement of pieces on the board. So here you see that white's pieces are all on the king side. So before doing that, please divide the board into two equal halves. So you know that there are 8 columns or 8 files and 8 ranks. So here you divide the 8 files A, B, C, D into two halves, two equal halves. So A to D and E to H. So on the first half, you see that there is only that one king is all alone. Whereas on the second half of the board, you see that one, two, three, four, five pieces are gathered. That means white is clearly going for a kingside attack against black's king. Now take a look at the placement of black's pieces. Rook on f7, knight on e8, king on g8. There are only 3 pieces on the king side and 3 pieces on the queen side. So black requires some piece on the queen side in order to attack the white's king, but it's already too late for that because white has already gained the momentum and white can win this position. The initiative is clearly with white, not with black. So that is one tip that I would wanted to share with you people. You can always note it down and you can also apply this in your game so that you can know which side your opponent is trying to attack you. Rook to g5. He wants to block that diagonal so that he can play queen to h4, queen e7. Pieces are coming to the queen king side in order to defend the g7 pawn. Queen to h4, knight to f6, queen h6. Once again, attacking the g7 pawn. He cannot take this pawn. Why can't he? Sorry, he cannot take this queen. Why he can't take this queen? Because it's pin. There is a tactic called pin. There is a tactic called pin. Pinning the here the pawn is pinned to the king. So here you cannot capture on h6 the queen. You cannot capture the queen on h6 because the king is under attack. So it is illegal to do so. Whenever you have a pin like this, you cannot capture the queen because according to the laws of chess, it is illegal to do so. You have to get rid of the pin. You have to unpin yourself and then capture the queen. Here, white is exploiting black situation by by performing this pin is adding more pressure to the G7 pawn, is bringing in more attackers. So here, one, two, three defenders, one, two, three attackers, and this bishop also here. If the knight has not been on axis, then this bishop would have joined and attacked the G7 pawn. So rook a7. Idea is to move the bishop to the eighth rank and bringing another defender here. So one, two, three, four defenders would be there. But then it's already too late for all this, and white has a wonderful move here, bishop to d6. It's called as a deflection tactic. What do you mean by deflection? As the word says, prevent a piece from doing its actual job. Here, the actual job of the black queen is to defend the pawn on g7. He's forced to move away from that position. That is, if he moves to queen e8 or d8, then simply you can capture on g7 check, and then it would immediately become a checkmate also. In a couple of moves, white can gain a much bigger advantage and win the game. So black doesn't want to go back, so he's forced to accept this piece on d6. Anyway, white has created his attack, and it's going to prove fruitful for white right now. He can take the pawn on g7. If you take this immediately, then it would become a checkmate. So black didn't play that. Instead, he moved his king to f8. So now he performed another move called rook h7 check. You know, discovered check. It's called a discovered check. You move a piece and open up the line for another piece to deliver a check against your opponent's king or the enemy king. So here you play rook h7 check. King moves to e7. Rook takes f7. King takes f7. Rook g7 check. King e8. Queen f6. Finally. And after this position, after white played queen f6, black resigned. Resignation means, what do you mean by resignation? Means stop playing the game and accept that you have lost. That is called as resignation. There is a thing called resignation in chess, where if you don't want to proceed further, if you are convinced that you cannot win this game by any means and your opponent is very near to win the game, then instead of pointlessly playing and wasting time, you have the option to resign the game, and you can simply sign the score sheets and say that, I have resigned, and sign the score sheet and end the game. So queen takes f6, and it is going to end because it is not possible for black to defend. The next move that white is about to play is rook to g8 check, and after queen to f8, rook f8 would be mate, checkmate, or even queen f8 would be mate. And this bishop cannot move. If he plays something like bishop c8, you can clearly see that you're giving up a big full piece hook, and then queen f7 check, and then king d8, queen g8 check, queen f8 mate. So it's clearly winning for white. That's why black resigned. No, why I mentioned that you have to resign. Actually, beginners have this habit. You know, they still continue to play in spite of being much materially down. They would expect the opponents to blunder. You know, but that is not a good thing to do so. But beginners have this habit of doing, when being too much material on, they will still expect your opponents to blunder and continue playing the game. Now that is a mistake. So you don't need to waste your time like that. Is not a gentleman. It's not a good sportsmanship to play like that. So normally, especially for beginners, it's not a good thing to. Being a chess player, you should also have a good sportsmanship spirit, and then it is better to resign the game if you are convinced that you cannot win the game no matter what. It is better to simply resign and go to the next game. Okay, so that's it about it. Finally, should see. So if you have any doubts, guys, please post it in the comments so that I can know what exactly your doubts are, and then I can clarify all those doubts that you have or facing. Okay, so that's it, guys, for today. Before I end the session, I'll once again revise the main points of what is a planning in chess and why do you want a plan. So, like I said, you need a plan because there's a saying called a bad plan is better than having no plan at all because it is at least going somewhere. So, you always need to have a plan because you need to execute your target, right? You need to execute your goal. So, you should always have a plan. And so, how do you plan? And it involves two factors, that is strategy and tactics. Strategy is based on logic, common sense, exploiting the asset by assessing the position on the board. You create a strategy, a long-term goal. It's a blueprint for your idea. So, and the means to achieve this strategy is called as tactics. It is a series of forced moves. Why do you call it forced moves? Why not unforced? It's called forced moves because the opponent has no way of escaping from that. So tactics, so that's called as tactics. So these two together, coupled together, form a plan. And there are some other extra tips that I mentioned, like splitting the board into two equal halves and checking whether which side is trying to attack. I hope you are all noted all those points and have understood it with good clarity. In case you haven't, please post it in the comments so that I can. I hope you have understood all the three examples that I have um, detailed you today. In case if you have any doubts, please feel free to reach me. In case you also want one-on-one coaching with me for beginners, I'm always ready to do so. I have a website where I take one-on-one coaching to auxiliary beginners and post beginners. You're always welcome to watch my videos and register on my site as a student in order to enter into my coaching classes, in order to enroll into my coaching classes. Okay, guys. So thanks a lot. Good night. Stay safe, and I wish you all a good luck. Once again, happy Onam to all my Malayali friends all over the world. And thanks a lot. It's Vishnu signing off from Kailash. Bye. I hope you enjoyed it, and give a thumbs up if you did. And please don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Thanks a lot. Bye. Good night.